approaching are the trainers. All U.S. military pilots completed a training program that was accomplished in 3 phases: primary, basic, and advanced. These future aviation warriors learned to fly in a wide variety of aircraft, among them the grasshoppers, the L-birds, like the Iraq's L-16 Champ, the Piper L-4, better known as the Piper Cub. Here they come now.
Ladies and gentlemen, those in the plaza standing, please kneel down or find a seat so you're not blocking the view of people behind you. Thank you.
In addition to serving as training aircraft, all of these planes had wartime functions as observation, reconnaissance, and liaison aircraft. One Army Air Force pilot reported 6 confirmed kills of German tanks while flying a Piper L-4 Grasshopper outfitted with a bazooka. Aircraft flying over a part of that L-bird gaggle. All nicknamed grasshoppers and all having a top speed of a blistering 90 to 95 miles an hour. All U.S. military pilots completed a training program that was accomplished in 3 phases. Primary, basic, and advanced. This process was designed to gradually increase the complexity of a pilot's training. One of the iconic trainers was the Boeing Stearman biplane, an open cockpit aircraft constructed of wood, fabric, and tubular steel. There were more than 24 different variants of the Stearman and more than 10,000 built. Used also by the RCAF, it earned another well-known nickname, the Cadet. These are the Stearman biplanes. To the complexities of radio communication and flying information, and advanced training was designed to prepare the air crews to go into combat. Another primary trainer was the Fairchild PT-19, a monoplane that was used by the Army Air Forces, the British Royal Air Force, and the Royal Canadian Air Force. Like the Stearman, the PT-19 was an open cockpit design. Advanced training was accomplished in aircraft like the North American AT-6 Texan, weighing in at nearly 3 tons with a 600 horsepower radial engine and retractable landing gear. The T-6 was designed to prepare pilots to fly state-of-the-art aircraft that they would use in combat. By the end of the war, North American aviation had built more than 15,000 Texans, including the AT-6 variant for the Army Air Forces and the SNJ version for the U.S. Navy. Of higher learning, here come the Texans, the 600 horsepower, 2 flights of 4. Listen to the sound that they make as they go over. also had a light cargo designation of C-45. The Twin Beecher, as it was known in civilian life, also served many functions, including as a training platform for bombing, navigation, and gunnery. The two Beech.
It's just sitting. Yeah. Well, like I'm taking her out.
Inbound right now are two Curtiss P-40 Warhawks, a 1937 design that at the time of Pearl Harbor was our #1 fighter in the Pacific. Directly to our left, the two Curtiss P-40 Warhawks with Allison V12 engines in liquid. In April of 1942, after a series of stinging setbacks in the Pacific, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle led 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers off the USS Hornet on a bombing raid to Tokyo and 4 other cities. 3 B-25 Mitchell bombers, 2 of them B-25s, one actually in Marine Corps PBJ-1 livery. Japanese radio codes. PBY Catalina flying boats were deployed. Found the Japanese fleet steaming toward Midway and radioed the information to American military planners. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the PBY Catalina. Carriers. Wildcat fighters flew escort for slower Devastator and Dauntless bombers, but logistical problems and bad luck plagued Americans as they began their attack. Most of the American torpedo bombers were shot out of the sky. In the first 3 hours of the battle, not a single U.S. bomb or torpedo hit a Japanese ship, despite 8 separate attacks by a total of 94 airplanes. Then, the tide turned. As the Japanese focused their attention on the torpedo bombers flying just off the surface of the water, SBD Dauntless dive bombers attacked from a higher altitude, fatally damaging 3 of 4 Japanese carriers. An hour later, the second attack by dive bombers destroyed the 4th Japanese carrier. The balance of naval power in the Pacific had shifted permanently. We're right now awaiting the SBD Dauntlesses and the FM2 Wildcats. Wildcats were designed by Grumman as the F4F, but were also produced in great numbers by General Motors under the designation FM2 Wildcat. The Wildcat and the Dauntless. A small but strategic airfield on the island was the focal point of 6. Ladies and gentlemen, here come the Wildcats. was Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined two islands in the Solomon Islands area on Guadalcanal, on a long, low-altitude circuitous route designed to evade enemy radar and maximize the element of surprise. Here comes the fork-tailed devil, the P-38 Lightning, which shot down Yamamoto's plane. The mission, nicknamed Operation Vengeance, not only avenged the deaths of 2,400 Americans at Pearl Harbor, but it also deprived the Japanese of one of their finest military strategists. In Romania continued during the summer of 1944. American forces pushed into France. Army Air Forces Commander General Hap Arnold noted the increasing number of vehicles along the side of the road that had just run out of gas. Here's the Liberator with the Mustangs. In the early days of the war, after the Allies had decided that the British would conduct nighttime bombing raids on German targets and the Americans would bomb during daylight hours, mission losses were horrific. Without fighter escorts, the U.S. bombers in particular suffered unsustainable losses to German fighters and anti-air attacks behind the papier-mâché. Here come the Mustangs. Mustangs also flown by the 332nd Fighter Group, the Red Tail Squadron of the Tuskegee Airmen. By 1944, the German Air Force was struggling to survive. In a single week that February, the first B-17 and the second, the Flying Fortress, 10 crew members in each aircraft. Transport aircraft. These lead elements jumped into Normandy to secure a series of bridges, causeways, and crossroads vital to the success of the Allied invasion of France. The C-47 began. Here comes the C-47. After 1945, General Dwight D. Eisenhower credited 4 weapons to winning the war: the bazooka, the jeep, the atomic bomb, and the C-47. Battle of Leyte Gulf was the largest carrier-to-carrier battle in history. In a flotilla that included 15 aircraft carriers and more than 100 supporting ships, the U.S. Navy arrived to capture the island of Saipan. TBM Avengers and the Curtis Helldiver, nicknamed the Big-Tailed Beast. As a surprise attack on American forces in the Ardennes area of Belgium. Before it was over, the battle would involve more than 500,000 maritime defenses, created a large 80-mile wide bulge in the Allied lines. One of the aircraft that drove the Germans back was the A-26 Invader, built by Douglas. raising the U.S. flag over Mount Suribachi, the Battle of Iwo Jima helped to secure 3 airfields and provided the United States with an important staging area for the much anticipated invasion. And directly in front of you all, here come the F4U Corsair, the bent wing bird. Built by Boeing could carry 20,000 pounds of bombs and targets to more than 2,000 miles away. At an altitude of 30,000 feet, it was able to fly above most of Japan's home island defenses. Instead of conventional gun turrets, the B-29's weapons poked from sealed blisters on the fuselage, linked through a remote control system that was a marvel of technology. It serves to remind us of those who sacrificed their future for that of our nation, and it's a tradition which dates back to World War II. The symbolic moment when a single aircraft breaks formation and soars skyward, leaving behind his comrades in arms. Flying legends for performing the missing man formation. 70 years ago, the world rejoiced, ladies and gentlemen. London's Trafalgar Square was the scene of an immense impromptu street party. Joyful Frenchmen celebrated on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and vast crowds gathered in Moscow's Red Square.